ask you, how many of you watch films? Bollywood fans? इतने कम हैं? आप लोग पीछे वाले लोग, they don't watch movies or what? And how many of you also watch regional cinema? OTTs, okay, perfect. Because our next speaker is somebody who has been associated with funding and backing some very, very iconic movies. The likes of MS Dhoni, Kantara. I'm sure Kantara, किस-किसने देखी है यहाँ पे? Awesome, great. Clearly a lot of Kantara fans out here. And movies is not just a medium for entertainment anymore or messaging anymore, storytelling anymore, but it's also an avenue to make money, to invest. So it's a very exciting one actually. Our next session, which takes us into an asset class that most investors have experienced, like you all are movie buffs, but very few have actually invested in it. Has any of you thought or have already invested in this avenue? No, okay. Then I'm sure you all should, focus all your attention right here, because we have our next speaker, Mr. Nitin Menon, joining us. He's a chartered accountant with over 18 years of experience in corporate banking and investment research. As managing partner at NB Capital, he has been instrumental in positioning content and media as a serious emerging alternative investment theme. His session today, Investment in Content and Emerging Alternative Investment Theme, promises to be one of the most thought-provoking of the day. I'm sure your thoughts are already been provoked. So let's call upon Mr. Menon to take this forward and to tell us more about how investing can be done in content and media space. Please put your hands together. Over to you.
Thank you. I mean, the morning session, talking about film finance, I was just talking to Vikas, but I said, among all the sessions, to start off with, public markets would be the most preferred medium. And in that sense, giving the ball to me and saying that Nitin, talk about private markets, under that talking about thematic, and under that talking about film finance, or content finance, I think it's a rare thing to do. Though it's good, I mean, to start of the day with something that is refreshing, something new. And this is the first kind of asset class that has been tried and tested in India. We've never seen something of this magnitude. Content financing, in other words, film financing, has been an asset class in India for a very long time. Unfortunately, if you look at it, this asset class has moved a lot over the last 100 years. You could see that making movies has moved substantially. Unfortunately, organized funding hasn't moved in that same space. And in a nutshell, this is the gap that NB Capital is trying to fulfill. And we feel that because we all love watching movies, and I don't think so there is anyone in this room who really doesn't love watching movies. Is there? Everyone, I believe, in some form. Either it is Bollywood, it is regional. You love watching movies. Either it's on theatre or an OTT. This is something that we just don't ignore. And that's the reason why we have a 100-year-old industry in the Indian film industry. And we feel that movies will continue to be made, and whether we like it or not, it will go from strength to strength. But capital also needs to catch up, and given that today, if you see over the last 20 odd years, we've seen capital growing, but not in leaps and bounds. And we feel after the OTT boom, which I'll explain to you as to how this has evolved over the last 20-25 years, we feel because of this OTT boom, we feel capital has to catch up. And that is the gap that we are trying to fulfill in some form or the other. So let me just go to the next, just give you a run through the slides. So folks, this industry is a very organized industry. So people feel that this is unorganized, that people lose money. Not at all. Every year there is a report that comes up from Ernst & Young or any of the big four, which puts a number to this industry. And there are 4 targets which I've highlighted, which talks about digital media, broadcasting, film entertainment and music. These are the 4 subsectors where the entire concentration of capital needs to go to, because this is the raw material for the industry.
And film entertainment, which is about close to a 20,000 crore industry, is where content is made, and that is actually the raw material flexed out, and that is burnt across digital media in the form of OTT, broadcasting in the form of satellite, music in the form of the Spotifys and the Ganas and the Savans of the world. India produces the largest content in the world, okay? Remember that. It's not America, it's India. We produce close to 1800 movies. In America, there's only one language, there's English. In India, there are multiple languages. You've got Hindi as the dominant language, and then you've got 4 at least regional, and add to that you've got another 2 or 3 which are upcoming, whether it is Marathi, Gujarati and Punjabi. These are upcoming. So if you look at the entire gamut of movies made in India, we've got close to about 1800 movies. Out of these 1800 movies, I would say at least 1300 to 1400 see the light of the day at the theatrical level. Now the dichotomy of this whole thing is, we have the largest number of movies in the world, but we have the lowest number of theatre screens in the world. If you compare ourselves to America or even to China, we are close to about 8,000 screens in India, whereas China has about 80,000 screens, America has about 40,000 screens. So only on the theatrical aspect, there's so much to deliver. So in that sense, every movie tries to find, let me get at least the theatrical screening, because we feel that the movies bomb, or are they hits and flops generally at the theatrical level. It's because they don't have a place to showcase. So the demand even for theatricals is increasing by the day. So you go to any place in a tier 2 or a tier 3 town, it would be impossible to see a mall without a screen. So the demand for screens also has to explode in India at some point of time. Coming to the second part is online film releases. That's nothing but the digital part of it. See, today I have seen this space growing over the last 20 years. I've spent close to about 2 decades only in this space, understanding this space right from 2008 till date. So we have seen how this industry has gone, which I will talk to you in the next slide. So today we talk about close to 500 movies are released only on OTT in some form or the other. So the demand for OTT is also going to increase. It's not going to reduce, because post-COVID our appetite to watch screens on our own time in the comfort of our homes is just increasing. That is not going to diminish. So the value of this is just going to enhance. Earlier, if I had to just take you back 20 years back, we had only theatrical. From theatrical, we had something called a satellite, where you saw TV boxes coming and movies coming into those TV boxes. And since then, we have seen OTT. So the number of screens that we are looking at have just increased. And I would say that it will go on increasing by the day. You could have more of viewing in terms of, when you use artificial intelligence, they try to understand your patterns better, and they go on generating content. Today, whether we like it or not, over the last probably a decade or so, entertainment has increased. Whether it is watching Insta Reels, whether it is watching long form content, movies in any form, it's just increasing. We spend tremendous amount of time just watching content. It's not going to reduce. So we feel that this kind of opportunity in engaging with content is just going to increase. Yeah. So, this is a very important slide, folks. As I said, we've seen this space and हम लोग पिछले 20-25 साल से देख रहे हैं, and ये जो growth है space का, right from 2008 to 2018, this space is just increasing by over the last 20 years. तो आप देखोगे कि 2000 में जब theatrical screens थे, that was the वही एक dominant screen, वही dominant theme था to watch a movie only on the screen. Post 2008, you had something like broadcasting revenues coming in a big way. You had music coming in a big way, in whatever form or fashion. You could watch it on your TV, or music हम अपने what do you say on tape और इस पे सुन सकते थे. Post 2016 is the time वो जो बोलते ना एक flare up हुआ, और वो flare up हुआ in the form of OTT, in the form of overseas, in the form of digital viewing. अब digital viewing बोलेगा तो either you say it is like एक Savans of the world, एक OTTs of the world, या overseas, वो एक substantial pickup हुआ. And post post COVID 2020 के बाद ये explosion की at such a level कि the dominant part of watching a movie became OTT, and that became very strong. In other words, it came to such a situation कि अभी if you look at it from a perspective of number of movies being made, if you put a number to it, एक 1200 movies जो बनते हैं साल में in India which are released at the theatrical level, substantial portion OTT में recoverability होते हैं. अभी इसका मतलब क्या होता है? Let me just give you an understanding. Generally, people always look at it and say that a movie is when you break it down into these pieces: theatrical, broadcasting, music, OTT, overseas as well as dubbing rights. Majority of public होता है यार picture तो hit or flop होता है. Generally, picture hit or flop is only at the theatrical level. It is never at the non-theatrical level. And when you talk about non-theatrical level, इसमें सबसे important होता है non-theatrical rights. Non-theatrical rights में satellite होता है, OTT होता है, music होता है, overseas rights होता है. और recoverability जो है ना, the linearity of the movie is such that assuming a movie is made at 100 rupees, majority portion, right, 70 to 90% of the cost recoverably is generally from non-theatrical. ये एक बड़ा source of revenue है. और उसके वजह से people like us say that can we come up with a platform only to invest in this business, and that is the reason why we came up with NV Capital, is to just provide debt on these movies to such an extent that our capital gets taken out on the non-theatrical part, because जो broadcasting है, OTT है, music है, इसका जो revenues आता है takes care of our debt. And इसका अभी अब people always say because theatrical पे ऊपर नीचे होगा, we don't focus on non-theatrical, because theatrical में जो hit है ना, let that be the upside for the production house. But for people who want to borrow against the non-theatrical, हम है वो provide करने के. और ये जो business है, broadcasting हो, OTT हो, these are in other words, these are very linear in nature. So if you have to plug it down to two pieces, the theatrical aspect is linear, the non-theatrical, which consists of OTT, satellite, music, are linear in business. And जब linear होता है तो we can extend capital because हमको इसका cash flows दिखते हैं. So assuming if a movie is made for 100 rupees or something like that, generally he recovers anything between 40 to 50 against the OTT rights. That is somewhat in that range where he knows that इतना मिल सकता है. Against that, you can always lend capital because you know that at some point of time that capital recoverability is very certain from the OTT right. So that is one of the reasons why organized capital can come into this space in a very big manner. और वही हम pitch करते हैं. किधर न किधर हमें मालूम है कि ये business है, it is very easy to capture that. And once it becomes easy to capture that, हमको capital lend करने भी easy हो जाता है. अभी ये बहुत important slide है क्योंकि the reason is if you look at the amount of movies made in a year, roughly 1800 movies are made, उसमें से 1200 का कुछ एक visibility होता है कि इसमें कैसे identify करना है. तो ये identification thing बहुत important, because at any point of time every language has about 40 to 50 movies which always will have tremendous value on the non-theatrical. Whether it is OTT, whether it is dubbed, whether it is music, इसका हमेशा एक demand होगा. ये कभी change नहीं होगा क्योंकि if you look at the broad platforms in India, whether it is Netflix, whether it's an Amazon, whether it is a Jio Hotstar, उनको साल में every week they need one raw material, one content piece. तो सब पकड़, if you catch, सब लोग को साथ में मिलेंगे तो 200-250 तो content pieces तो उनको चाहिए साल का. And this is the market we are trying to target. और उसमें भी when we look at it, because given our fund size, we don't intend to do more than 15 to 20 at peak in a year. So for that, raw material काफी हमारे लिए fund करने के लिए, we just have to identify कि okay इनका opportunity क्या है at the OTT, at the non-theatrical, based on which I can fund. So this becomes a very critical pyramid structure for us to lend for lending in this business. And as I say, because the amount of content is only increasing, it is not decreasing. If you look at it, because way back in 2008, if you go way back in 2008, there was only broadcasting. It had not picked up. OTT had not picked up. Because of the onslaught of OTT, you could say that at the end of the day, now there are only 500 movies that see only OTT every year. So the demand for content is increasing. Capital is not catching up. Not that I'm saying that they get expensive capital from private sources. you have private financiers in some form or the other. We try to do it through the organized form and in that form and fashion. So in that sense, we feel that funding about 15 to 20 in a year एक easy task है. It's not that difficult. वो हम लोग किधर ना किधर तो हम लोग एक समझ है कि इतना movies तो निकलते ही है जो हम fund कर सकते हैं. Now इसमें ना बहुत important है कि selection criteria. So how do we select? And the top layer is very important कि हम लोग projects कैसे fund करते हैं. The production house is very important in this space. Very important. The vintage of the production house, the project he mounts, the star cast associated with that. Not that I'm getting into the content part of it, whether it's going to be a hit or a flop. That is not my botheration. As a debt provider, वो मैं कर ही नहीं सकता और मुझे वो करना भी नहीं क्योंकि मैं creative space से नहीं हूँ. But इतना important है कि ये 5 visibility होना चाहिए. The production house should be the top one. He has to have some vintage कि उसने past में enough projects किया है, exploit किया है, ये बेचा है, he has sold that in some form at the OTT level. वो important है. उनका contribution, उनका equity contribution बहुत important है. That he puts his skin in the game so that I can mount that capital on that project. And second, the last 2 points are very important. Today, if you look at any of the divisions, whether it is South or Bollywood, every state has at least 10 to 15 actors. Or ye 10 to 15 actors are always saleable. It will never happen that they don't see the light of the day. Their projects will not see the light of the day. It will always see the light of the day. So for us to understand the actor star cast, understand the director, a prequel, sequel franchise, like classic example, Durandar. आप लोगों ने सब तो Durandar तो देख लिया है. अभी Durandar Part 2 will always be a hit. At least it will gain that initial traction. Because franchise movies and sequels always get some sort of traction in some form or the other. And it has happened internationally too. If you look at I'll give you an example of Disney and Marvel. Marvel का जो भी franchise है, उनका whatever movies they make on that will always get. So today there might be close to 25 franchise movies that are made only on the Marvel franchise. और सब movies का collection होगा. The same model we are also trying to follow कि franchise, prequel, sequels will always do it. Kantara is a classic example where it, though it was a prequel, it did exceedingly well. It will always, because the word of mouth of that movie, and since the first part has already built the brand recognition, it becomes easy for the second part to also build that traction. As you know, deal structures, we are an AIF, so we can do it only through the NCD route, that is how it is. But in terms of investment, how we identify, we don't get in at the starting stage, we generally get it at the mid stage, because that becomes very essential in identifying the project, and we know cash flow visibility becomes extremely critical. वो important है. जब तक हमें cash flow visibility नहीं है, तभी तक हम वो project में enter ही नहीं करेंगे. There is no question of that. That becomes very critical. Again, it is, as I said, the last point is non-theatrical. See, I always focus and harp on that. Theatre has got nothing to do with my cash flow. Non-theatrical is something that we extensively focus on, and that is something that we take tremendous amount of comfort, because theatre सब लोग बोल सकते हैं कि आज वो 10 भी हो सकता है, 100 भी हो सकता है, 200 भी हो सकते हैं. उस पे we cannot bet and we don't intend to bet. So non-theatrical, because that is linear in nature, it becomes easier for us to mount our capital, because cash flow visibility becomes certain, and we are not dependent on some extra event or some I would say an ancillary or another event which we don't have control on. So that becomes critical in identifying cash flows so that we know how to enter a project at any point of time. Security structure very similar to, because NV Capital represents Nitin and Vivek. We were ex-bankers, so we know at the end of the day what are the security, the collateral that we need to take in any form or fashion. And in this case, the collateral becomes the IP, right? And that has tremendous value. If you've seen over the last few years, just to give you an example, a company internationally, a company like Warner Brothers, it is in the process of being acquired by Paramount or Netflix. The value itself will be $100 billion. So we feel that IP has tremendous amount of value, and even in the last 1 year, you would have seen that there were at least 4 equity deals that happened in this space, whether it is the Dharma deal, whether it is the Excel deal or Sanjay Leela Bansali. All these deals have got tremendous amount of valuation only because of the IP. And we feel that IP as a right is as equivalent as any other tangible property. this is then a very new thing, because today, the general theme and what we're looking at is people want diversification, and diversification is becoming exceedingly critical for for any kind of investing. And because we can't rely only on public markets, we can't rely only on private markets, people say that how can we diversify to an extent whereby which I can still generate alpha in some form or the other. This is the gap that we are trying to fulfill. We feel under private credit itself, there are multiple themes, multiple sectors that can be looked at, and we feel content, film, entertainment financing could be really looked at in that sense. It has got tremendous amount of bearing, because we feel that cash flows are visible. Today the number of platforms are increasing today. Even if you look at the top platforms apart from the Netflix and the Amazons of the world, you've got Apple coming in a big way in producing content. It is heavy on content in America. There's just a question of time before it enters India also. Probably they could see a situation where the YouTubes of the world will start producing content in some form or the other. They are already doing that. The only thing is we don't see that in music. They are pretty strong in how they offer minimum guarantees. I feel that's a question of time before they also start coming into long form content. Second, please understand one more thing is, there are very few countries in the world that are capable of producing content the size like India. Apart from America, there is no other country, to a certain extent South Korea, there is no other content that produces content and gets that kind of cash flow visibility. We have that opportunity. So even if the government, if you say today, they've come up with conferences like Waves where they promote media entertainment, because they know that it's got tremendous amount of soft power, and it is a huge export potential. To such an extent that if you look at America, movies are a huge export opportunity for them. Not opportunity, I would say it provides, I wouldn't say very substantially, but provides substantially to their coffers. So I would say it's just a question of time before Indian content also starts traveling abroad. And because when you put your content on a Netflix or an Amazon, you are spreading your content across about 180 countries across the world. So because of that, your content also gets tremendous amount of recognition and traction. So I think it's just a question of time where our content proliferation and monetization of content will just increase in the time to come. It's just a question of time before that happens. We feel that recession proof, of course, that's a huge point. If you're a 100-year-old industry, content continues to be made, it will continue to be made. Irrespective of whether capital catches up or not, it will continue to be made. It's just a question of time. And this is the last slide. It's open to you all in what we do. We've already invested in about 10 projects. We exited 5 purely on a debt side. Our targeted return is close to about 8%. Right now we are about 21.2 at the fund IRR. Vivek and me represent the institution. We spent about close to 25 years only in this space. We've just been financing content, and we have seen this industry grow from strength to strength. So this is all I would like to say. I would be happy to take some questions in this regard, and please let me know if you all have any questions in this regard. Thank you.
Hello? Yeah. Hello, I'm Bipin. I'm one of the investors through Altport. So my question is basically, this scheme is only debt related, or you try to take some equity as well in the production house, or long term, or it's just a short term?
Right now it's purely debt. Simple reason is because we feel equity has opportunity, has potential, but right now we don't want to step into the shoes of equity. We want to establish this asset class. Once you're able to establish, then I can move on to the equity front. But equity front, if you get into it, what happens is you are prone to the theoretical side of it. And that is something which I don't want to get into it, because I want to establish this asset class. Once this is established, then I could think of various other opportunities on the equity side. But yes, there is an opportunity for equity.
Okay. And is it a class 1 or a class 2 AIF?
It's a category 2 AIF.
Category.
Yeah. Generally all these things will be under category 2 AIF.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Pallavi. I'm part of Unicorn India Ventures, but I'm part of the marketing department. So we've seen previously that on YouTube, say on YouTube, once it started gaining some traction, there was also a lot of traction with web series. The same is happening with Instagram right now, where there's a lot of traction with mini series is coming up. Financing movies is very understandable since there is star power that can attract attention and therefore revenue. But are you also looking at maybe financing these mini series on Instagram, or companies that actually come up with these content IPs and go all in on just creating attention there?
That's a good question. See, let me take this question in one level.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm financing the intangible asset industry. Conventional mediums generally are, happy financing the tangible asset. Okay, that is anything that is tangible. Intangible, I just started with film finance, but there is tremendous amount of room for growth. You can, as you said, there can be multiple areas. Like for example, I don't know the amount of content creators right now on YouTube. There are a million. All of them need to be financed in some form or the other, and no one's looking at that space. So there is tremendous amount of opportunity that you can play around. But yes, I want to start with long form content because of the simple reason that there is cash flows. So my prima facie objective is to identify cash flows. Once that is identified, then I can play with multiple opportunities on the right side. And it need not be only movies. It could go below to any layer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Nitin, for making a compelling case.
Excuse me,
We have
I'd like to ask one question. Since you said, I'm Smita Atre from Pune, I'm a chartered accountant. My question is that you have experience in this industry for over 20 years. So what is the failure rate you as bankers have seen? Because it's a debt product essentially.
Yes.
So is it credit rated, or if informal rating, then how would you rate the risk?
See, that's a good question again. This industry right now is not seeing the rating process. Whether you ask me now, 3-5 years down the line, there is possibility, there is a possibility. But right now, there is no rating around it. And to say that, when we were, as bankers, we had nil delinquencies when we got into it. Because the opportunity for us to exploit that, or we knew that the returns were significant, or the production house to which we lent was substantially good. The only thing is, banks and financial institutions were very, I would say, because they don't know how to get into the space, they were very non-committal. But since we understood that, we took that leap, and that is the reason we came up with the category 2AF. 5 years hence, you could see multiple institutions looking at this space. There could be a possibility at that time that rating could come into play. But as of now, no.
Okay, and what is the risk associated to it? Out of say 10 units that you have seen in last 20 years,
Yeah.
how many have been?
So risk is always at the theatrical level. To a certain extent, that risk will be at the theatrical level. And there is, and any industry when you are making a movie, assuming there is a certain amount of production risk. I don't deny that. Insurance covers us to a certain extent. But beyond that, there is that risk of production. I don't deny it. But based on the fact that, we make so many movies and we deal with production houses, first timers, that risk is substantial. Only with first timers. But people who have been doing it repeatedly, that risk reduces substantially. Because if you compare it with a real estate asset, not that an apple to apple comparison, when you want to make a movie, generally the period of making a movie is between 12 to 18 minutes. तो उससे ज़्यादा time period कभी लगता नहीं है. And उसमें licenses का इतना ज़रूरत नहीं है. तो it's like a cookie cutter model once it gets into production. So that production risk will be there. उसमें किधर अटक गया तो insurance है. फिर भी अटक गया, then you could say yes, that risk is there. But I would say over the last 5-7 years, since there are multiple players participating in the industry, even providing capital, production risk has diminished very substantially. It is rather very negligible if it is a very good project.
Hello sir, myself Dr. S. Kilat, I am Doctor of Medicine. I just want to ask a few questions. As it is a debt instrument and you are telling that you have achieved 18% of CAGR till now, am I right?
Yeah, based on our interest distribution, we are close to that.
Whatever, previously you have achieved that. So in future also you expect such kind of
Yes.
debt instrument?
Yes.
After deducting your charges, whatever your
Yes.
charges of
Yes.
see what is the absolute return a investor will get?
So as of now, at the investor level, we are close to about 20% after charges.
20%. And what is the minimum investment in your fund for an investor?
It's about 1 crore because category 2F's commitment is 1 crore.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's all the time we have for questions, but I have a question for you before we conclude. I mean, the definition of paisa vasool is different for you, I think, than most of us who go into a theatre or watch a film on OTT. What one piece of content or film has been paisa vasool for you in terms of monies or in terms of something exciting you've watched?
So I honestly, as I said, I removed the non-linearity part of it. I would have loved to fund a Dhurandhar and get the upside on that, but
Vote we all.
I vote for you all, absolutely. But the chances of getting those projects, I would say it's like a VC model. It's kind of tough to hit them right on the head. But I would say that for us, because we are a debt product, I'm concerned only with the return that I get on the project. To get on the equity side, it is good, it sounds very interesting, but you know what, the hits are also, the flops are also substantial. So somewhere you need to be patient, you need to be in the long-term game for that. And unless I establish this as debt as an asset class, I would think getting into equity would be slightly premature.
All right, on that note, thank you Nitin once again.